Hello, Aaron. How's everything?
Hello.
Well, welcome
Things are
everybody
good. How
to.
about you?
I'm good too. I think there's a bit of lag, but that's fine. You know,
Oh.
it's all right. But anyway, welcome everybody to the fourth episode of Beyond Fenway, right? And today's episode is called How to Learn Online slash Be Self-Taught, right? So, why are we talking about this, Aaron? You want to go ahead?
Well, we're both educators, and in the process of becoming educators, we've also had to go and learn things for ourselves, although I don't think it's safe to say that either one of us is self-taught on the guitar.
Yeah,
But
maybe to some degree, but not completely. Yeah.
yeah, and we can talk about where those lines are. But when it comes down to it, I guess it's worth noting that there's no such thing in any of these things that are kind of inherently social as being completely self-taught, right? It, that doesn't really exist. So we wanted to talk about this to sort of not to put anybody down who is working through that at all, but rather to encourage people to look for things in a deeper way.
Yeah, it's more of like a
Maybe think
supplementary
about,
kind of thing,
yeah.
for like, because
Yeah,
people can be like, I think we both know how confusing and how easily one can be misguided in such a journey,
right. And
so
like
this is really for that.
and allowing and like we want to talk about ways to think about, well, am I being misguided? Maybe not
Right.
because something was bad advice
Yeah.
even, but because it's not helpful for where I'm at as a player or what I'm
Correct.
trying to do as a player. Whatever that might happen to be, because in the end, picking we're going to get to this when picking instructors, right? There may be an instructor who is fantastically good at the style that you want to learn. That's great. You should be learning from their recordings, maybe not from them personally. And you should get a teacher who is not as good at that style, but much better technically on the instrument and can help you sort of sift through the things that are hurting you in your progression toward playing like that, and so on. Yeah. So we're going to talk about all those things, and that's why we wanted to talk about it, to encourage people to keep learning things. And when you do, or if you do decide to go to a teacher, you really you take ownership of what you're looking for and how you're going to work with that teacher, because in the end, it's you who's got to learn it. Yeah.
Exactly. Like for me, like I started off completely by myself. Um, I think maybe I could safely say that the first 2 years or so of my journey was completely being self-taught. Like self-taught to a point where I was essentially just asking questions to either Google or just, like I didn't grow up with musicians. But like, over time I had found like one or two people, just like people who were doing it as a hobby, and used to go for jam sessions with them. These are like just basic stuff, playing Metallica songs or like playing Summer of '69 and all these things, right? But when you go to these jam pads, you meet other bands as well. And then you come across like other nice guitar players. And where I'm from, there are a lot of good metal players actually in this city. Okay, and I genuinely mean good metal players, and some good rock players as well. So in those jam pads, I used to come across them quite often, and some of them were nice enough to like show me little things. Like I still remember this one little thing. I heard the guy just do that sweep picking thing, right? And then
Oh
he
yeah.
showed me the C sharp minor arpeggio. Right. So he just showed me this top part. Like I can't really do that to save my life, but what I used to practice it as is like right. And then like I went home and I by then I had an idea about what octaves were. So I just tried to find like down another octave, you know.
Hmm.
And then I realized, oh, so this is like one big line. And then later on, I kept searching further about it online, and I learned that it's an arpeggio, you know, and
Hmm.
so on. But anyway, that's where I started from. And then eventually in school, we had these extracurricular activities, right? Now, I started off as a mandolin guy in sixth grade. Like for us, it's class six. And then around class 9 I switched to guitar, right? And like I'm talking about that area because that's when I started playing the guitar. Before that, as a mandolin player, it was really more of like you're learning to play the national anthem, for the school orchestra kind of thing, like Indian classical orchestra,
Yeah.
and just like some traditional Indian music, right? So I had very little idea about Western music at that point. I was really listening to more of like Bollywood music on the radio, and this is from a time where cassettes and CDs were still a thing. So I was
Yeah,
listening
yeah,
to
yeah.
cassettes and CDs at home, right? And then later on, once I started learning guitar at school, this same guitar teacher happened to be learning from like a very well-known guitar teacher in my city, like privately as well. And he had recommended me to go to him, and then I used to learn from another metal guitar player later on. Even he had recommended me to go to him, so eventually I ended up going to him. And then this guy like opened my mind towards stuff like Mahavishnu Orchestra, Wes Montgomery, and then Steve Khan, if you know that guy.
I think I've heard of him, but I don't know him.
It's
Yeah,
pretty
sorry.
pretty niche. He had actually, I think he had also mentioned Jim Hall probably. We were talking about Jim Hall in the last class, and I just like I think
Yeah.
it just slipped my mind back then, but whatever. And then eventually, after that, after about a year of that, while simultaneously learning a little bit of singing from my aunt, I went to study at Berkeley, and that is when formal music education began for me. So I think I've had like both the sides to some extent for sure, you know. And I
Oh yeah,
think,
well yeah, if you got through Berkeley.
yeah, it was quite a
Yeah.
journey for sure. But because of that journey, I'm aware of how dangerously complicated it can be, you know. Like the thing
Yeah.
is, I would say I was still lucky in a way because when I was asking things to Google, there wasn't as much information as there is in today's time, right?
I'm kind of curious, Raj, when because I don't I'm listening to you talk and like I started playing. This is why I say by no means am I self-taught. Because I started playing when I was 4.5, 5 years old. And I was given lessons from that time. And I stuck with them. Like even from
Right.
that age, I would actually like practice what I was told to, and that's how I ended up learning to read so soon and doing it that way. But when did you start playing? Because at that age, I couldn't look stuff up. You know what I mean? Like it was
So,
genuinely people had to give it to me. It's not something like I didn't have devices and.
right. So for
Yeah.
me, actually, I got into music pretty late myself, like in general. I got into music when I was in about like fifth grade. It all started with a little. We used to go to this place called Millennium Park in my city, and there was this Bangla rock band playing over there named Lokhi Chhara. They're actually huge right now. You know, but
Oh, nice.
I think the lineup has changed since then for sure. But then, yeah, that was the band I was actually listening to, and that was my first experience listening to live music over there. They were just like playing in that park. There was this sort of a really small area where people could sit and listen to like some performers or just watch some performances you know so that's where I started liking music. And then my uncle used to listen to a lot of Bollywood, like old school Bollywood, and he used to get cassettes and CDs from time to time. We had a cassette player at home, one of those boom boxes, if you remember those.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
one of
we
those
had
boom boxes,
yeah, I
right?
had one growing up too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We
So
always had one and then like if it broke we'd get another.
yeah, and ours actually lasted for a long time because it was a Sony.
There you go.
In fact,
Yeah.
we just stopped using it. Never stopped working. We just
My
stopped
parents
using it.
my parents had a stereo and they still do and like, the ones where you had to like plug in the extra speakers, but it had like I think they still use this one and it's got this rotary of like 5 CDs and that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like
yeah. We had one of those as well. It was gifted to us.
witchcraft. Yeah,
Those,
and
I feel,
I think I could put
those are still the
two
best
tapes.
way to listen to music, though.
Which one?
I think those are still the best way to listen to music. Because, like, when I
CDs
used
or
to,
tape?
both, both, like any physical form,
Okay.
essentially. Because the thing
Well,
is, when I used to
CD is
listen
the
to
same
music,
thing as any.
say,
It's
say,
just a file. Hmm?
say, what you were saying?
The Yeah, CDs are just like MP3 and MP4 files, aren't they? The
No,
same
I'm
thing.
not talking about the format. I'm just talking about physically owning that piece of music.
Oh, yes. Okay.
You know what
Yes,
I
I can
mean?
agree with that. Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
totally get
because the
that.
thing is, when you physically own that piece of music, you were genuinely listening to that piece of music, and you were trying to
Yeah.
get as much out of it as possible because you didn't have a massive library, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not growing up like freaking Bill Gates, right? So we can't just go and buy CDs, even though CDs and cassettes were actually, they weren't super expensive back in the day. Like I think cassettes here went for maybe what, 50 rupees maybe, so that wasn't too expensive, you know but whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm digressing. So I
Yeah.
actually started singing along with those records first before I picked up any instrument, right? And then my father used to travel to China quite a bit. Like, not China, actually, Taiwan to be more precise. They are like not part of China. But
Yes.
yeah,
Not
so
gonna make
in
a statement about that
Taiwan,
here.
correct. So he used to get us things from Taiwan every time he used to travel there. And this one time he got us these MP4 players. We thought they were iPods, but no, they weren't. They
Yeah.
weren't iPods. They were just MP4 players. Just made in China MP4 players. However, you could like I what we used to do was we used to get CDs, and then we used to I think they used to call, what do you call, like you could extract the files from CDs on these Windows computers. I think you use, I forgot the software that you would use for it, but you could extract the audio from that CD. So we used to extract the audio and then put it on the MP4 and then listen to it at night.
That's
And
how I used to when I got iPods. That's what
yeah,
I would. Yeah.
and our uncle had also given us a radio, like just a portable battery radio. So my brother and I used to listen to that stuff in this very room. So this very room is where my brother and I actually grew up.
Nostalgia.
Yeah, yeah. So
Nice.
this side was my bed, this side was his bed. And there was one closet here, one closet there. And the two beds
Yeah.
were sort of close to each other with like one little,
Yeah,
bed
there's like a
frame
little
in
gap in
between.
between, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's how we grew up in this very room. Now it's
Well,
my workspace, and my
to
brother
pull
has his
things
own place. But yeah,
to pull things back to like the being self-taught and learning online, because people have been able to, look into things that they get interested in
correct,
um, via the internet since what the 1980s, 1990s. Been places to share this information, and it's only gotten like richer, and people are now putting out online courses and tons of stuff like that. And this plays, I think, nicely into our first point of like where to begin, a few things to consider, and like your anybody's personal interest in music and their like history with what is it that's making you interested should be a really important start.
correct.
Um, yeah, I mean, we are both primarily guitar players. But I think this is true of whatever instrument you feel like you might be jumping into as well, right? What music you're interested in, how you want to facilitate it will probably be the thing that decides what instrument you're thinking about getting into. If you're really into metal, you're probably thinking about voice, drums, bass, or guitar, you know, to start with. If you're thinking about some kind of other style, a different instrument might come up. But no matter what, each instrument's going to have its own technique. And I think this is going to be a theme that I'm going to stick to through the whole thing. But like at first, instruments feel awkward and tense. But in the end, it's going to feel really relaxed. And that doesn't happen unless you keep messing around with it. And for anybody who's thinking about being self-taught to any degree, one thing you probably cannot avoid is like if you want to get better and see improvement, you got to pick up whatever instrument it is every day,
Yeah.
at least a little bit every single day. Like, doesn't matter how bad you think you are, it doesn't matter how much you think you know about the instrument, you should be trying to make some sound on it that you recognize, not even that you like, but just that you recognize
Right.
every single day. And for anybody who's like interested, Kenny Warner has a great book, Effortless Mastery.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
he's got that class at Berkeley as well.
yeah, I sat in a few times on that, and like the one main takeaway I get, and this is perfect, I think, for people who are starting out on their journey and don't have a teacher yet, and are not willing to put that into it yet, because it's like time commitment and direction changes and stuff. It's like every time you sit down and you sing a little bit, if that's what you've chosen to do, or pluck something on the guitar, or blow something on a sax, or whatever, and you're teaching yourself, play something, listen to it, and learn to like that sound, right?
Yeah.
Because that helps you relax. It's like learning to relax when you're playing your instrument from
Right.
the very beginning, whether you're going to end up learning Van Halen stuff or you're going to be interested in the jazzy stuff, or like there's the players who became big and things that you're probably hearing that do have tension don't last long. And I think that's like, but we want longevity, basically. I'm assuming most people do, right? They want to be able to do their thing for as long as possible. And yeah, so that's where I would begin for
Right.
everybody. It's just like
In
when you
fact, I
start
think
on your,
this is a good segue into the next point. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. The next point that we have is basically where to begin and a few things to consider. Right.
yeah, that's what I
Now,
was trying to just make that one point. Yeah,
yeah.
that's what I was thinking.
And I think we both can agree on one thing for sure. That is, even though you may not require reading and writing music in your career as much, depending on what kind of music you're in, or like what kind of artist you're working with, it always helps to know how to read or write music. I think that's the
Yeah,
number one thing.
self-taught or not.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And I think you can very much self-teach yourself how to read or write stuff, at least well enough to be able to read a lead sheet for sure. There are enough, especially in today's time, there are enough material, like there is enough material out there, on YouTube, on
yeah.
forums, by independent vlogs, blogs, etc you know so I think that's definitely number one. And number two, I feel, in my journey at least, specifically for guitar players, we tend to care less about our technique. And when I say technique, I mean just like control over the technique. As in, if you're thinking about it, how many beginner to intermediate guitar players have you seen in your life who can do vibratos, but they have zero control over it? Because the
Oh
amount of
yeah,
control over your vibrato can really do wonders. You know what I mean?
that's a
Which is
little,
really,
yeah, that's a small
you know,
point, but yeah,
same for slides, same for bends as well, right? You know, like most people I know, they'll just direct, right? But the thing is, like, if you have more control, just like listen to a bunch of blues players, you can really get a lot more out of it, right? Even with
yeah,
very limited vocabulary. And then, like, once you have that technique at a good place, once you're at a good place with your technique, and you start working on your vocabulary, that really saves you a lot of time. This I realized this like much later on in my journey. I wish I had realized that
yeah,
earlier, you know. But
yeah,
again, I didn't have somebody telling me to.
yeah, and yeah, and uh, coming back to a thought I always have when these like specific points come up and these ideas come up, and this is something that again I'm gonna stick to a little bit. It's not the relaxation alone, but like no one self-learning should ever be harshly judgmental of their sound. And to get over it, if you are that kind of person, again, sitting down with the instrument for 20 to 30 minutes minimum a day, and then also like gonna go into the realm of guitar specifically, but if you're on another instrument, I have examples for this too. Let's say, because again, you're self-learning and you're kind of starting out, you've got a cheap instrument, it's not going to sound good no matter what, right? There will be restrictions to that instrument no matter what. So just listening to whatever sound comes out and sort of labeling it, but not judging it, I think is really important. So like on guitar, if you've got like a cheap guitar and like a cheap amp, and you plug it in and it sounds like, I would say, sounds like plastic, or you turn on that distortion for the first time, right? And there's no depth to it. It's just like a pure digital, like clipping
And
sound, you
I
know?
had learned something about the distortion pedal the hard way. Like the
Yeah,
first time I had plugged in a distortion pedal into, like, I didn't have an amp back then. I used to just
yeah.
plug in directly into the like mic input of my computer.
I
Okay.
used to do that too.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
it sounds like shit, dude.
it's
You know,
so bad.
it's
It's
just
so
so
bad.
bad. Then later on, I learned that okay, you're supposed to plug it into an amp and it reacts with that preamp and that power amp section, and that's when you get a decent sound out of it. But
Yeah, and it starts to
without that, it
grow.
just sounds so bad.
But you know what I do now? I'll when I practice things, and this is for anybody who's like, again, why I recommend this for self-learners. When I'm practicing, and when I practice now, because I don't take lessons now,
Right.
at least not for guitar at the moment. I mean, here and there, I'll call somebody up that I want to talk to them and learn stuff that they're doing and whatnot. But for the most part, I'm not taking lessons, right? But I'm still learning and improving. And the way that I do this is with the stuff that I used to have when I was a beginner, but I didn't know what to do with it. And for anybody watching this, I imagine you are um, either an adult or old enough to know, right? We don't learn like children, and people aren't just going to hand you the thing and you're not just going to soak it up. You have to listen. And like, that's what I do now. I plug in with my cheapest stuff and I get a very dry and arguably bad sound. But my goal is not to make me sound good with something else. It's to, okay, if I'm practicing like sweep picking and I want a bit of a shredder sound, I'll get a quick, just sort of like, yep, okay, there's distortion, yay, good on my cheapo busted amp. And like now I'm gonna practice that. and I'm going to try to make it sound as clean or as articulate or as smooth, right, as I want it to. Um, and that's what I'm practicing. And the fact that like the sound that's coming back at me, things that are outside of my control, they are with, I mean, I can get a better sound if I want to with the gear, but that's not what I'm practicing.
Right.
I'm practicing the instrument, right? And to make the instrument sound good, um,
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing.
So
And like,
exactly
but
these two
when,
things.
when, yeah.
Yeah. No, no, the thing is, over there, one problem comes up, right? At least it used to come up for me. That is, it could get very boring. So what did you do to deal with that?
Um, I look for smaller things. It rarely gets like, I just never feel like I'm done, I think is the problem I run into.
Right.
So like if we go back to that, you mentioned the sweep picking that A minor. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, when I played it there, I heard notes ringing from somewhere else on the instrument. Okay, so I'm gonna work on that now. No, okay, I gotta mute a little bit more with my right hand. Okay, that was better. Um, and then, okay, well, I didn't like how that last note was much more accented than other ones, so I'll just kind of listen for that now. Okay, maybe I should put the accent on a different one. No, no, no. See, these are things that I would just like, I keep like digging into something new. I never really get bored. There's always something else that I'm hearing that it's not that I don't like it, it's that I want the control over it. I don't know. I want yeah. I don't know if that's always the case with other people. It also depends on what exactly you're practicing, right? But there's almost always a little bit more to dive into with the sound. Sweep picking's a good example to go on with that because you can always make it more even or change the way that you're accenting things. Um, you can play with the tone that you're using. Um, and then when you do get things super duper even, speed it up. You know, try it twice as fast, and then, oh, wait, nope, I can't do it that fast yet. Bring it back down a little bit until it is even, and then slowly push it back up until you can do it twice as fast, and then double it again, and then fall apart, and then, go back down to wherever you could do it evenly and try to gradually raise it up. Um, but then at every different speed too, the same things apply. Am I still getting everything smooth and exact? I mean, yeah, I never run out of stuff. I don't
Right.
know about
Yeah.
anybody else. I just don't get bored with it though. That's not my, yeah. Um,
Good.
how did you deal with
I
that?
used to get bored with it for sure. So my journey was all over the place. Now, what I used to do was in my initial. You wanna rejoin? There's like 10 minutes left for this
Uh,
meeting.
we can run out the 10 minutes and then we'll,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So my initial years, I had put in like lots and lots and lots of hours for sure. Like I started playing the guitar I think around 2009, you know, and I didn't really have much of a social life after school, so I used to just go to school, come back home. In this corner, there used to be this computer, like old Windows 98 computer, and my dad had got me this Zoom G210 processor from Taiwan, right? And I don't know if you can see that little electric guitar over there. That's my first electric guitar, one in that corner.
oh yeah, I see it. Is it an Ibanez?
No,
Nice.
it's a locally made one.
Nope.
It's called Grayson. It's a local Gibson, so to speak. Yeah, yeah. It's made with furniture wood, but whatever.
Particle board guitars. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why I never got rid of that. And that little acoustic in that corner was my first acoustic. But
Like how they're, yeah, still out, like not
I
even
actually
in.
plan on hanging them somewhere here. I just haven't got the time yet. But
Yeah.
anyway, so I used to just like come back home, plug this in, and just play till night. Unless I had like we used to have these home tuitions and all for English, mathematics, science, etc. So apart from
Right.
that, that's all I used to do at home. That's just go to school, come back from school, play. Now, as far as what I play is concerned, a lot of it initially was just like utter BS, like in the sense just playing, random stuff, just playing. And then as you keep doing that, certain things stick out, and I came up with lick somewhere, or maybe I was watching a video and like by mistake I figured one little part, and oh, and then I tried moving that around in a different fretboard. So I had figured out shapes pretty early. I just didn't know what they were called.
Mhm.
Like the idea of melodic cells, I had figured that out pretty early. I just didn't know what it was called. But I could
I
figure that
love your
there's a geometry there.
saying this because it is exactly my point for saying like you've got to pick it up every day
Yeah, yeah,
and you've got to not worry about if you're playing the thing that is right. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
Like when you are self-learning, there are no rules except the ones that you put down.
Mm,
And like if you are comparing yourself to somebody who has been playing just about every day, whatever instrument that is, for 20, 30, 50 years, you are going to sound different in
yeah, yeah,
a
for sure.
in an uncompre like you can't comprehend how different it is. The things that that person has been like listening to themselves do and thinking about for 20, 30 years. And I imagine some people who watch this that's like maybe twice as long as you've been alive, or it's as long as you've been alive. And
Exactly. There are a few disadvantages to that as well. Like for instance, in terms of my technique, I used to play like that, you know. You see where my thumb is. So I
ah,
used
yeah,
to
yeah,
really
yeah,
play
yeah.
like that. So
The
for
thumb's sticking out. Yeah.
yeah, so for quite a few years, I had like not quite a few years, like until the time I actually started learning from somebody, my hands were like that,
Yep.
man. And
Yeah, the
I didn't realize
wrist
how
development.
bad of a technique that was back
It
then.
can cause a lot of problems, yeah, because you have
Yeah,
to force. Well, actually, that brings us very nicely into the next point. Maybe we should close off and go to the next one because we've got analyzing players you look up to and fixing past mistakes.
I
I think we
agree with
should.
you. Okay, now players that I would analyze or look up to and fixing past mistakes. That's basically our next point, right? So now
Yeah.
the players I was looking up to back then, if I remember correctly, I was still listening to guys like Brian Adams and then a little bit of Bon Jovi, some Bollywood music, of course, like I said, and then Metallica, Megadeth, these kind of things. So, of course, the players I was listening to are essentially the guitar players of all of these artists or bands, right? And
Yeah.
I don't think I used to analyze them at that point as much as I would really just try and learn their solos or parts from guitar pro tabs, if that makes sense. So definitely not much analysis going on there. However, like I remember, you've heard "Crazy Train" by Ozzy Osbourne,
Yeah.
right? So I had learned that tune once, and I remember like "Dee-doo, dee-doo, 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 dee-doo," like I could see, oh, okay, F sharp minor scale, so like that kind
Yeah.
of little analysis I could do, like wherever I could remember certain geometry that I had figured while learning a scale online or something like that. That little bit of analysis I could do, and I did watch other interviews and tutorials from these players specifically where they were talking about technique. For instance, I'm a huge Dream Theater fan. So I used to watch Rock Discipline, the John Petrucci tutorial video, you know,
Yeah.
and I used to really look into his techniques quite a bit. Then Paul Gilbert had an REH video as well. Joe Satriani had one. Steve Wise had one.
Yeah.
I did eventually come across Alan Holdsworth, but I understood nothing about him at that point. I just had my jaws dropped. That's all. I'm like, what the hell is
Alan
that?
Holdsworth. If anybody like sees him for the first time, I'm always just like, just stretch out your fingers as far as they can go and
Yeah,
hope.
dude. Even
Those are the
Petrucci, man.
chords you play.
If you
Huh?
see the rock discipline video, right, there are some exercises which are insanely stretched out, dude.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like, okay,
And I'm
do
like,
this, and
how do
then
you even stretch your pinky that far?
just whatever you can do, and then okay, sweep it now. Ah!
Yeah,
Yeah.
but whatever. Um, Either way, some of those tutorials definitely fixed a few past mistakes. For instance, that thumb thing. Now, that thumb thing was also fixed by one of the like teachers I was learning from as well, who was a metal player. So he told me that okay, thumb has to be straight. It
Yeah.
should never be seen from up front. Okay,
Yeah.
you know.
You want this shape in the hand for everybody who's wondering. Your
Correct. But
fingers
then I
should.
was seeing BB King play. I'm like, hey, look, I can see his thumb, whatever. But then, eventually I
Yeah.
realized that it's all about context. Ideally, I want to keep it like that so that this part is not touching the bottom of the neck. And I just have like a nicer looking set of fingers going up the fretboard, up or down the fretboard. And in
Yeah.
general, I also feel just changing my thumb position like that really opened up a bit more stretching possibilities from my fingers as well. you know
Yeah, it increases your the potential of your finger independence, You
Correct.
can because
Correct.
that's where all of your fingers can move however they want.
Especially for solo guitar. Especially because
Yes.
like
Yeah.
this finger, like this thumb placement really helped me when I eventually got into Ted Green, you know or even like Joe Pass for that matter. It really makes a difference.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm
Yeah.
digressing again. And I think I have ADHD, dude. But
Well,
anyway,
I was thinking about this particular section, and we always look at it as fixing something, as if
right,
everybody who picks up their instrument is like starts out doing it completely wrong or something.
right,
And I just don't look at it that way anymore. Especially having like, I could argue, but I'm not going to, that I'm a self-taught trumpet player.
right.
I've never taken a lesson on that instrument, right? But my background in music puts me in a place where I know what to listen for all the time.
Right, right,
And
right.
and it's always just a matter of, and this is again why I kind of started out with like, learn to listen to yourself. You're doing things a certain way. You know roughly how the instrument works or whatever, and you're just trying to make things sound like you want them to sound,
Right.
whatever that happens to be. And so I don't really. You, people absolutely should look at people that they're watching and decide whether or not the way that they play is going to be the way that you get that. Um, the one I always run into that I find challenging is Jimi Hendrix because I love playing stuff by Jimi Hendrix. I can't play like him, it hurts my hand. Like, it just does. I have to find new ways to play the things that he does. And I watch the videos and I like figure out how he's doing all of his
Right.
chords because he uses the thumb over so much. And I use that too, admittedly. I primarily use that when I'm playing like open chord pieces and like bluegrass and country and stuff. Just a really
I'll
handy
just
way to
pause
get.
you there for a sec. So you
Yeah.
have like worked on imitation like quite a bit in the past in that case.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I feel I've
And
never had the patience for that, but I've tried to imitate quite a bit. Because like in
yeah.
one of my bands we do play quite a few Hendrix tunes, right? But again, I never sound like Hendrix, but we have still gotten called back, so I'm guessing I didn't do half bad a job while sounding like myself. But I
Good
have
to call.
realized
You're
one thing
good.
about Hendrix tunes: having a Strat helps or a Tele helps for sure.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
play it on a
I
Les Paul, it just doesn't sound right, man.
No, you need the single coils, and you need some kind of
Yeah.
like yeah, nice hairy. I want to call it a hairy sound. It's
I,
awesome.
I, I call
But
it I call it a dirty,
mm,
unclean, cool sound.
it is. It's so
It
like
yeah.
it's
It's
distinct, but
just
it's
raw,
not
man. You know what I
ugly.
mean?
It's just raw.
Yeah. I think when you say hairy, I think that means it's I can see where you're coming from over there.
The pedal is called fuzz, okay?
But I
Forget you.
never use that fuzz pedal. I just don't
I
like fuzzes. I actually, let me
Me
be, let
neither.
me let me let me be more precise. I actually love the sound of fuzz. Okay,
When somebody else is playing it, not when I'm
yeah,
playing
not when
it.
I'm playing it.
I don't know what it is. I guess we just suck at it.
Yeah, we
But
probably just suck at it. But
I digress
yeah,
now. Like the whole idea, right? When I was doing that sort of stuff and the imitation and everything is like I'm not trying to become a copycat, even when I'm trying to sound exactly like someone, because when I transcribe like jazz solos and stuff, which is something I like to do for my proficiency, and it makes me feel good, and I feel like I'm improving when I do that. Like, I remember transcribing a Dexter Gordon solo when taking lessons with Cheryl Bailey, and she pushed me. Like, no, you need to sound exactly like him. And I chose him for that purpose because he, like, I don't know if you've ever listened to Dexter Gordon, the sax player, but he,
hmm.
like, his time and the way he gets through things, I don't know if he was drunk or what, but, like, he, he can pull back on the time so hard, and it's awesome. But it's difficult to transcribe, especially if you want to write it out. But it's not really the core here. Uh,
But that can
but
actually
then,
fall under the analysis part, that we were talking about. Because
yeah,
transcribing is a
yeah,
very
exactly.
important part of analyzing your favorite player.
But when I'm figuring things out and I have to do something to, and it's not like, especially if you ever transcribe jazz, anybody watching this, the players make mistakes. You are going to transcribe those mistakes,
Right.
right? And whether or not the player themselves would view it as a mistake is irrelevant. And the same thing goes when you're listening to yourself, whether you're like, it's the first time you're picking up an instrument and you squeak out a half note on a saxophone or you choke a note on the guitar, right? The splat thing, or,
Or just
you,
string slipping out of my hand.
yeah, or you fart a note out on a trombone or something like that.
All of those
Like,
things happen to me still. But I think that's
but
part of being
really
an
what it
improviser
is
also.
we're adding techniques to make our sounds more consistent in the way that we want them to be, right? Um, or our lines more consistent, and that's really all we're ever doing. And part of it comes back to being relaxed. The more relaxed you are, the more freedom you'll have. And yes, to do something technically, you're going to have to engage muscles.
Correct.
But like if you can engage only exactly the amount of strength and the number of muscles that you need, no matter what instrument you're playing, whether it's your voice, right? Because this goes with this too. You don't want to have a whole lot of tension. You need only a certain number of muscles and you need only a certain amount of tension to produce big, rich, powerful, proficient sounds on your instrument. And when you're fixing mistakes from before, whether that's technically or theoretically or anything, you're just finding a more efficient way to make a particular sound. So
Right.
I take the additive psychology approach, or the, sorry, positive psychology, but I always think of it as just you're adding techniques. You're not taking away anything of your past
Right.
in practicing or in learning something new or in figuring out the Hendrix techniques or in playing a classical etude with pristine thumb position and right hand positioning and moving the right hand thumb along with the strings, right? This is just something that you're adding
Right.
to your abilities technically. And if you want to go between the flamenco style of picado where you plant your thumb and then go back to something a little bit different when you go into like a four-part moving voices thing on a classical thing, if that's what you're interested in learning all on your own, that's what you got to play around with. And
Right.
there are lots of different approaches. And in the end, the amount of practice that you're going to end up doing, whether you have lessons or not, is going to lead you to your own answers. So from the beginning, when you're self-learning, don't think of it as fixing a mistake. Think of it as adding ideas and things that you can do. And don't be afraid to, at the same time, right, the adding of ideas should be, well, let me just not engage this muscle. Let me not tense up my shoulder when I play this, right? Let me think about really, you know, breathing along with my phrasing if you're a jazz guy doing stuff, whether that's the guitar or mandolin or anything else.
Right.
You're,
Makes sense.
yeah. I don't know if
Makes
that
sense.
came across very well, but it's, yeah, you're
Now,
adding technique. You're not taking
since you
away anything.
mentioned positivity, I think that's a good segue into the next point, the importance of positivity and patience in order to achieve your goals.
Mm,
I think we've both had enough students by now who are always asking for shortcuts, man. Now the thing is, see, I can create shortcuts only to a certain degree, you know. That is still not going to take away the fact that you will still have to work on things. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like one of the shortcuts, I'll tell you, um like playing in all 12 keys versus playing in very specific, or like versus working things out in very specific keys and transposing to the rest of them in the moment. That's something I actually learned from the Berklee methods, right? If you
Yeah.
all the proficiencies are going through C, F, B flat, E flat, G, D, and A. Seven keys,
Hmm.
right? They don't go through
Yep.
all the other keys. All our proficiencies are in that, right? It took me a while to understand that, like what Berkeley is actually having you do in the first place, you know. It's really
Yeah.
like they're just not spoon feeding you over there. They're basically having you think, you know. That's real because these are basically the more common keys, right?
Yes.
And then all the other keys are essentially sharps or flats of these. Or well, like what's the word for it? uh I'm forgetting what it's called, man. You know how D sharp and E flat are the same note. There's a specific term
And
for it.
harmonic.
Enharmonics, yeah.
Harmonic.
You know, like that can be one shortcut, right? But you will still have to work on those seven keys, right? You
Yes.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like let's say, you know, show me spread triads. I can show you spread triads. I can show you one way of playing spread triads. But really, there are two to three different shapes for each
Yep.
inversion. You know,
Yep.
you will still have to work that out eventually because only knowing one shape for each spread triad or each inversion is not necessarily going to give you the level of freedom that you're looking for. And the goes for shapes of scales as well, right? Or just shapes of melodies in general, string skipping, everything, right? You can only create shortcuts only to a certain degree. You will still have to work hard for that, right?
Yeah.
And
I think,
way to go about it is patience.
yeah. Yeah. And consistency. I'm gonna add to that, like, consistency.
For
Like
sure.
the because I mentioned this back in the beginning,
And
and I'm going
sorry
to
to
stick to it.
interrupt. Consistency, and I also feel just more focused practice. It's very easy to lose focus, Like I know I'm the worst with
Mm.
focus, and yeah, throughout my journey I've had that issue a lot. Over time I've worked on it. So now, even like, see, even after being a professional, I still learn things, right? I still go through PDFs that I've collected over the years. Or sometimes for certain gigs I have to learn new material, sometimes even a new technique. For one
Yep.
of my upcoming gigs I had to learn three different techniques, so I really like took out time from my like schedule to just specifically practice that with the tune that I'm supposed to play that with, you know
Yeah.
so that's basically focus practicing. That's all I wanted to add to that. Go ahead.
Um, yeah, but I mean, it all plays in like really well to itself. Um, when we say, the shortcuts thing is interesting because in the end, effortless playing, if you ever look back on like how things felt to play when you were a beginner after you've come a certain so far, right? It's always a bit surprising. And a lot of times, at least with the first instrument, I think people learn it happens in a way that you don't realize until you do it all over again. Um, but and then when you do it all over again, you see the progression much more quickly because you know exactly what's happening
Right.
all the time. But at first, everything comes in uh, very slowly, and all the ideas are very new and fresh, and um, openness to that is really important, right? Again, no sound that you're creating is bad, right? No matter what. Anybody playing an instrument, I think, and trying to be musical is a good thing. Um, and uh, and I teach kids how to play, so yes, I've heard my share of like screeching and difficult sounds and whatnot, but that's
Right.
really not how I think about it anymore, right? Because when you see somebody getting better at something, that's the thing. And like it just doesn't change. It looks different when you're at a professional level, right? Somebody changes their sound. They're improving and they view it that way, right? They view that change the same way one of us would look at, I don't know, a 10 or 11-year-old student learning to play their first piece of music in over a month or something like that and actually learning it. Like it's incredible. And it feels the same way. Um, but no matter what, that does come about through, like you said, patience. And then I'm going to lump consistency and goal setting at this in the same. So for anybody who is picking up their instruments and self-learning, starting out with something, right? When you do sit down for 20 or 30 minutes a day, you should have something that you are trying to do for that 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah,
Then
it shouldn't
after
be
that, if you have,
completely like out in the ballpark, for sure. I
yeah,
totally agree with that.
exactly. But this is where it gets kind of weird. It is okay to just say, let's say this is the first time you've ever touched the saxophone. This is your first time. Sit down for 20 or 30 minutes and say, I'm going to play a note. Get Google out. What should my mouth do? Right? Like sometimes that's the question you have to ask if you're
Yeah.
starting. It's like, and like you sit down and sometimes that's what it needs to be. And weirdly, after like a month of doing something like that where you do it every day, right? And then maybe by the end of the month you're like, okay, I'm going to play just the first few notes of that or like a phrase
I
of
think
that.
you froze for a bit.
You first. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
We both froze, I guess. But anyway,
Well, it's probably me. It's probably my internet.
that
Why
happens.
internet?
Internet's.
Whatever.
Um,
Anyway, but after a month, you might get to the point where you can play little phrases and stuff like this. But it doesn't happen until you're able to play that note. Sometimes that's going to be your goal for 20 or 30 minutes. And that can go with guitar too, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think enough people at all levels of guitar playing, and I do mean all the levels, pay enough attention to what do their notes sound like, you know? At least from the classical influence that I've gotten, like that's kind of a big deal to me. Even like the super tone oriented gearheads for like, the Scott Henderson lovers and the Jimi Hendrix lovers and those guys, like, yes, your gears producing incredible sounds and you can play notes like that, but are you like really listening to what it sounds like and can you do other
Yeah.
things? Whether or not that's their goals,
I mean,
sort of
but
irrelevant,
I will
but
also say both the players like Hendrix and Scott Henderson, these guys are like old school guitar into an ampler, man. They're not like their tone
yes,
is not really described by the equipment, they both sound great by themselves.
they
Because,
do. And
you know,
that's
yeah.
kind of my point. And like when they learned instruments, I bet they are I'm not saying
I mean,
that
Scott is
they are
learner.
guilty
Scott
of
is
it.
a learner player. But
Yeah, yeah,
Hendrix
yeah.
was, I believe, more of a self-taught guy because I don't think back then you
Right.
really had anybody
But
showing you.
one thing that I think is important to note, and I'm not saying that these people didn't do that because they absolutely do or did. Hendrix for sure, when he was like learning, didn't think of his sound as bad ever. He just listened
Hmm.
to what it was and tried to make what he wanted. And this goes with anybody who's self-learning too, right? If after a month, your first month of playing an instrument, um, suddenly you find yourself having a bad day and you feel like you're at square one again after
Yeah.
5 minutes of trying to play that tune, fine, but the goal, don't put it down and end your day. You're playing for 20 or 30 minutes. Your goal started with, let me play this tune. Oh, I didn't reach that goal today. Fine. Reset the goal. I'm going to play a note now for 20 or 30 minutes and just make it sound as good as I can or how I want it, right? That can be the goal. It doesn't need to be, but yeah, when we say persistence or sorry, patience and consistency and goal setting, the goals don't need to be crazy. They just need to be specific. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like, yeah, the
No, I
goals don't
agree.
need to be
But I
wonderful.
also feel
Just,
this is where chops come in. As
yeah,
in, as a professional, no matter which level you're at, what you're talking about is a pretty natural phenomenon to happen anyway. That
yeah,
there are going to be good days, there are going to be bad days, right? There are days when you will feel naturally a lot more creative, and then there are days when it's like you feel like an absolute utter dipshit, right? But really, at least as a performer, my only option over there is making sure that I have enough jobs that I can go to while I'm having that brain freeze, right? Because that can happen at any given point, right? The older you get, the more stress you're gonna have in your life, right? The more responsibilities you'll have in your life. And stress and responsibilities do not go well together with creativity all the time. I'm not saying it can't. It can definitely affect creativity, maybe, but at least for me, it doesn't. So let's say I'm playing a gig and suddenly some other responsibility comes into my head while I'm playing over a standard. you know. So at that point, I'm not naturally creative anymore, but then I can't just stop playing, right? Like there are people watching me play. There's a band backing me up. So at that point, I just have to instantaneously pull out my chops from under my sleeves, man. Right.
I've been playing duo and quartet over here before and just thinking, I wonder if like somebody from immigration is in the audience right now.
Exactly, like those kind of things, and it's really
Or if
funny
they're gonna
and
say
irritating when
notes.
that
Like,
happens, right? But
yeah.
in these situations, you have to rely on your chops, right? And that's where job
Yeah.
building comes into play as well, right? So I think that also comes under focus practicing in general, like whatever
Yeah.
you're working out, right? Whether it's transcribing something, whether it's you creating an idea, whether it's you creating like just writing down a solo, improvising a solo, working on a tune, whatever. The
And
whole
I'm going to add
point.
something here. If it is the first week of you playing your instrument, since we're talking about self-taught people who are probably, just getting into it, that's where you're at. That too. Yeah, carry
Yeah.
on.
So now everything that you are getting out of it is like the whole point of learning is to basically extract things from there, right? And then apply it in a creative way. I think that's the philosophy that most of us miss out when we're trying to be self-taught. Right.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to not miss out on that because from the very beginning, I have always looked up to people who were primarily like creative improvisers. I just didn't know they were improvisers. I used to think they were writing down everything, but then as I dug deeper, I realized that, oh, they're not.
Yeah, they
Plus,
made it up.
I
Yeah.
Plus, being an Indian and being exposed to Hindustani classical music or just like different styles of traditional Indian music, there is a lot of improvisation going on in this style in general, right? So I was always exposed to that idea anyway. Even when I was learning singing, I was taking just basic Hindustani classical lessons, right? I wasn't taught scales. I was taught, like, I had learned maybe like three, four rags, right? And I was immediately pushed towards improvising with that framework. Right? So that way, like, I was lucky from that particular perspective. But then I know that most people trying to learn by themselves aren't really exposed to that philosophy. But that is really the philosophy, right? Whether you choose to be a composer, an improviser, or both, or like be a computer like Jacob Collier, you know, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Either way, and I mean computer in a good way, by the way, not in a bad way. Like for anybody who got offended by the Jacob Collier statement. But anyway, anyway, I completely forgot what I was gonna say. Yeah, so it's really to make sure that you are building a vocabulary for yourself, a creative vocabulary, which you can build a career out of, or if you are just doing it as a hobby, just create things for yourself out of. If you're teaching, teach out of, etc. If you're a music therapist, I'm sure there's a separate use for that. If you're a music producer, there's a separate use for that. The good
Yeah.
thing about this art form is there's a lot to do here, right? And I think that's actually this last point I mentioned that there's a lot to do here. That also I feel can be a huge struggle for somebody who is being self-taught. Um, I think we can narrow down things, especially the way Berkeley narrows it down, that there's music production and engineering, electronic production design, music therapy, music education, contemporary performance, jazz composition, contemporary writing and production. Right. So there are
Film
like different
score.
categories of majors. You were saying
As a film scoring, writing for
film
musical
scoring.
theater.
Exactly.
Um,
So all of these, I think, these are some fields that we have narrowed down for you, and if any, you can basically search these fields up, and whichever one interests you the most, dig deeper into those, right? Like for me, like from the very beginning, I have been more of a player. I definitely wanted to play. I wanted to play in the moment. So I knew that it would be related to performance for sure. Right? Even though I have taken contemporary writing and production lessons at Berkeley, I switched to performance eventually because I knew that that wasn't me. Right? I want to play. I want to get up on stage and I play. And somewhere along the line, I also fell in love with teaching in general. So teaching and playing live, I think they really supplement each other very well because whatever I learned from my live playing experience or whatever I learned from my studio experience, I also use that in my teaching and vice versa, right? So
I find
similarly,
myself,
say,
I was gonna say, I find myself like having really gone down the teaching route to where I teach other things now too. Like, yeah. Um, And uh, yeah, that's what I love about this. Because the thing about music is, and like the instruments that are available and what is it really is. Once you get to that point where you can produce the sound, you can do the deeper dive into the things that inspired you to do that to begin with. But the
Agreed.
fact is, and you can't get past this, and this is what I think is really wonderful about anybody who's out here listening to this uh, and is interested in like taking any of our advice. Like, you won't be able, you won't do the sounds that inspired you to start singing or playing guitar or playing whatever instrument you want um, until you produce the sound. And it really is that simple. And you've got to sit down and just kind of listen to it and be consistent about it. For it won't take, I did the month analogy before, right? After a month, you'd be able to do simple tunes. If you are consistent, every day you sit down for 20 to 30 minutes and you work on your singing and you just try to get a nice, clean, steady tone note, right? You start there. Within a week, you'll realize you have the proficiency to start doing the things that inspired you. Um, but you can't ever let it go that the note is the basis of that. The sound production from wherever you're getting it is where that starts. And then like you said, there's so much to do. It's a never ending. Once you get into it, it's like, well, okay, this is the sound that I really, really want. What all is going into it? There are the dynamics, the note length, there's the timbre of the notes, there's all of this stuff that goes into it, right? The production quality of the recording that I'm listening to, and blah, 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 and
Right.
so on and so on. Never ends. It really never ends.
Okay, so I think that brings us to the last point of this particular episode, that is why everyone should consider taking a few lessons at some point at least, and also how to identify the right teacher for yourself, right?
Yeah.
I think between the two of us, I'm probably the more experienced one with being self-taught, like considering that I started off much later as well and by myself. So I
Yeah.
think I've probably faced a lot of mistakes, in that particular sense. So hence taking lessons, like when I started taking lessons even before Berkeley, the stuff I learned about technique, the way I started looking at the fretboard, like I could tell that some of it was similar to what I had figured for myself, but at the same time, just getting that confirmation from somebody that, hey, you figured it out right, and this is what it's called. That really makes a difference, like that really motivates you further. Now, another reason why somebody should take a lesson is like it's always nice to know that there are certain standardized things that every musician should know. Be it reading and writing music, be it how we identify scales, intervals, how chords are named, the chord types, different stylistic survey of popular kinds of music, etc. Because all
Yeah.
of this will add to your overall musicianship. You know, as a performer, I am not playing one style of music all the time, right? Some musicians are, but then I'm not one of them. I do not commit to one specific band. I have multiple bands and I have multiple people I play with. I have multiple duos as well, right? And in all of them, it's always a variety of different kinds of artists, kinds of music, or like one duo is strictly just jazz duo, whereas another duo is like a mix of jazz and classics. Then
Yeah.
there's other like people I play with where I also play
Not to
Hindi
go
sometimes.
too far off of the actual topic, but I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions. People uh, who haven't engaged with music, haven't learned it or haven't begun learning it, may have about people who do play music, at least professionally, is like, because I get this all the time, even where I work. Oh, are you in a band?
Yeah.
Uh, which one? Like, what do you play? Like, well, I did a classical thing a few weeks ago, but then I was doing a jazz thing the other day, and then I was playing
Yeah.
some like pop and some country with some friends the other day. And it's like, what? What? And it's like, yeah, that's what it is. But
Yeah.
anyways, um,
Every artist
yeah,
is not, let's say, a band like Coldplay or a band like Guns N' Roses,
yeah.
etc. Uh, in
Which,
fact, even if we take such bands, like let's say a band like Toto, for instance, Steve Lukather is
yeah,
a session player himself, right? Steve
yep,
Lukather has played on records by Michael Jackson also, right? Or
yep,
take a bass player like Nathan East. He's played with everybody. Or Victor
yep,
Wood played with everybody, right?
yep.
And then
Carlton, was it
suddenly you
Carlton?
see him playing with Dennis Chambers over there. And
Yeah,
then you see an old video of him playing with some other pop star.
yes, yeah.
And then who's that guitar player from Extreme? Ridiculous good player. Nuno Bettencourt.
Oh,
Nuno
yeah, I don't know
Bettencourt,
his
I
name.
believe, plays for Beyonce.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Because the thing is, like, you have to understand that having your own band and making money out of it is not that easy, right? As a full-time musician, we do have to survive. Like for me, I'm fortunate enough to have a teaching career. Like I have been teaching for more than 11 years at this point, right? And quick plug, if you want to take lessons with either me or with Aaron, hit us up. If you
yeah.
like
Let us
this
know.
particular video so far, hit the like button, hit the share button. If you would like to ask more questions, comment down below. Engage with us, support us, and hopefully one fine day this podcast will get bigger. And we could probably get people to come on the podcast and talk more about music, music education,
Yeah.
guitar, jazz, and whatnot.
Yeah, please share it or share it with people, especially who are thinking about starting music. If anything you heard here, especially has kind of spoken to you.
Correct.
Yeah,
Now, coming back to the topic, teaching
yeah. When we
is,
should get less.
yeah, the teaching is something that I love. So does Aaron. And that's why we have been doing it for so long, right? And as a full-time musician, we often have to have our hands on multiple things, and eventually in your career certain things will have a stronger impact in your career and you'll end up focusing on that, and other things become more like background things. Like for me, teaching and performing are my laser focus, right? But before that, I've also had my hands in session work. I've also done a little bit of voiceover. I've also done a little bit of mastering, right? I've done a
I,
little bit of jingle writing. I've done some what's the word for it? I'm forgetting what it's called, man.
well,
Field
I think
recording.
this is a nice little parallel with like the way self-learners are probably feeling quite often. Why isn't my sound exactly like that? And it's like, well, have you listened to your sound and thought about what it is like?
Yeah, record
Because I've
yourself.
totally, yeah, I've totally listened back to myself playing guitar in my earlier days. Did a lot of this in college to just explore stuff, right? And then I do it now with learning the trumpet, like I talk about here and there. And like I hear something and I go, wait, this isn't something that I've heard, but I don't dislike it. I wonder if there are other players that do something like that. And then I get to find out more about what it is that's making that sound and so on and so on.
Mhm.
Um, but as far as like, I like what you said there when you talked about getting a teacher who validated what it is you already know. So I'm going to drop a little thing here for any self-learners out there. If you are an absolute beginner and you are not a child, and I mean that in a very literal way, like you're just, hopefully, if you're listening to this, you are of age, right? Old
Yeah.
enough to have your own account for things. Um, but you already have the metacognition, the ability to learn, and how to produce a sound on an instrument or to sing something basic, right? Before you go into lessons, start naming things that you recognize. Just take a little note of what it is. Like, I sang that thing and it felt like this. When my voice cracked, it felt like that, right? When I tried to reach for that high note and I was way off, or I started going, maybe people have had this experience before, where you start singing and then you go for like the lowest note in the tune and you realize it's way lower than anything you can hit. And it's like, and then you're just like, well, whoops. What did that feel like? Why, and just put a little name to that sensation.
Yeah.
And when you get to the point where you can, I don't know, sing a basic tune, you're ready for lessons. As far as picking the right teacher,
I would just add
because
one more thing there, like just to add a certain sense of encouragement to people. Even Alan Holdsworth was self-taught to quite a degree, you know. And if you actually watch his REH video, he calls the melodic minor scale the minor major scale, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not a wrong way of looking at it, right?
exactly,
It is
yeah,
a minor major scale, right? It's
yep,
literally do re mi fa sol la ti do, right? It is a minor major
yep,
scale. So I
minor,
think that's exactly
major,
what we're
minor,
trying
yeah.
to say, right, Aaron?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah. If you've got names for stuff that you're hearing or that you're feeling technically, right? Because we have names for, parts of the guitar and vibrato and, the pressure on the strings and all this stuff. If you're noticing these things,
like the
make a
Hendrix
note of
chord,
it.
for instance. I didn't know it was a dominant seven
Yeah,
sharp nine. I used to just call it the Hendrix chord because that's what somebody has taught me that as,
right.
like
Yeah.
that
It's the
foxylated
chord that Hendrix uses
ding,
on
dang,
Berklee.
ding, dang, right?
Yeah, I feel like that's just how he felt dominant chords, is just the sharp nine stuff. But
Yeah, exactly.
um, but when you're looking for a teacher, show them what you're looking at. And like you said, a teacher that's worth your time will validate that.
Yeah,
Like a teacher is gonna know what they're looking at or care about it,
yeah,
right? Like, oh, you named this. That's not quite right. Here's what's really going on. Try it like this. And they'll use a language that reflects what you've written down and how you're
right.
understanding it, right? They're paying attention to what you already know because as adults, you need that in a teacher. I
Correct.
think a lot of
There
teachers
is a flip
absolutely
side
should.
to this, which you had actually mentioned in our last podcast as well, that the worst you can get out of a teacher is apathy.
Yeah,
So you as a
yeah.
student will also need to make sure that you're sincere enough about it. A good
Well,
teacher,
that's why I
it
say
goes
do this
both ways.
first.
Yeah.
That's why I say do all this stuff first, because it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yes, it's effort, but it's also it's exactly what goes
And
into
it's supposed to be, and it's not
the learning.
supposed to be easy, right? It's really not
No.
supposed to be easy. Music is not music is too big to come to you. You have to go to music.
Again, I think it's a little bit of that process, because like no musician at the same time is only taught by other people. You know what I mean? Like it's this wonderful, I'm just gonna say discipline of blending information from other people because you know what sound inspired you to go pick up your instrument.
Right.
But at the same time, in the end, it's your responsibility to recognize when you are moving toward that sound as a student or as a player or whatever. And that means that you're going to be teaching yourself things, or you have to find ways to teach yourself things, whether or not you have a teacher, right? And if you start with that producing a note and all those things, the fundamentals of I'm going to try this, you're doing enough. You are, as a learner of music, self-taught or not. If you're trying to just start there with the simple things, if you realize there are a number of places where like I'm struggling to really put it all into context, then it's time to go get a teacher, right? Because you are naming the things, you just don't have enough to get you to that next step where things start to really connect. And that can get very complicated very quickly. Part of the reason I can excel on new instruments myself, having already done a lot of professional music, is like I went to school for it and I did all the theory of the ear training. That I have so many ways to connect information related to music
Correct.
as a self-learner that I don't really need lessons until I find something that is weird new. And I
Or
know how
just to
to sort of,
save some time. That's really it.
yeah, or if I feel like I need the social element of it as well, or a little bit more of a discipline push.
Right.
Like somebody's going to give me something that I'm not interested in actually learning, but I'm going to make myself learn it, which is something we all go through, at least professional musicians, right? Ugh, I hate this tune. Here we go, you know. But I know it. And like, but as far as when to go look for a teacher, I think when you're naming things for yourself and you know when you sit down with a specific goal, whether or not you've reached that goal. Because the first few times you sit down and just try to sing a note for 20 or 30 minutes, right? By the third time you do that, something was different, but you knew what it was, so you corrected. That's when you know you are improving. You've named things and you recognize what's going on.
Just a certain sense
Then
of
you can start looking.
self-awareness, essentially, like is building up over
Yeah.
there. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you
definitely.
can name what it is that leads you to that. Go to a teacher, and when picking the teacher, if that's, what you want to do, you're ready for a teacher. And when choosing the teacher, they should validate that. You shouldn't walk into their lesson and um, they say, okay, well, forget everything you've learned. We're going to start over here instead.
Right.
Even if they have a curriculum, because I actually think you should go with teachers who have a clear set curriculum. Like, yes, you're also going to learn these things. I'm going to teach you XYZ stuff. That's a good sign, in my opinion. But whatever you bring to them and your ideas shouldn't be discarded, right? They should be like, oh, I know what you're talking about here. Check out this page of my curriculum book. Look, that's what we call it. I think
Right.
that would be like perfect, but not everybody has that either. So
Yeah, I mean, not everybody follows a curriculum. Like, I don't necessarily follow a
I
curriculum.
do.
Yeah.
Makes my life easy as a teacher. Everybody curriculum is
I don't
curricula is good.
I don't
Curricula are,
usually
excuse me,
follow a
good.
curriculum for a reason because most of my student I only do one-on-one lessons. I don't do group lessons at all. So every student is very different, right? Now some prefer to have a more streamlined process, whereas most students that I have now are basically students who have seen my YouTube videos or like seen me play live somewhere, and they have like just come to me to learn how I play, how I think, etc. So now, how I think, yeah, I'm not interested in putting that into a curriculum, not at this point in my career at least. I feel I'm still in that journey, where I haven't streamlined it as much as I would like it to be streamlined. So
Yeah.
hence, I can't follow a curriculum there.
This
But
is just me being a business modeler. I do classes and curriculums because it's easier for like billing rosters,
of
keeping
course,
everybody. It's just, yeah.
no, no, of course. Like, and these are like
Also,
really because the
people
thing is,
have a
your
little bit
students
of a
will,
social thing to work with too. I think that's really good too.
of course,
When you
and
can
the
work with
thing.
other students, those people listening.
Correct. And thing is, see, like anyway, like every student is not gonna be the same, right? Like I think we also have to understand that every teacher is not right for every student and vice versa as well. So students will have certain expectations, right? Like let's say the parents of a young kid is coming to you. One of the reasons for them to come to you is to get a certification eventually so that it can help them in college applications once they have graduated school, right?
Need
So
structure.
I won't
Yeah.
be the right teacher for that over there since I don't do these things. But in such cases, there are many other people doing that. You're doing that, right? So you would be the right teacher for that, right? But
Yeah.
that's again that's a different. I think that um anybody who's self-learning at some point should be able to make that decision by themselves. I feel if they're sincere enough, you know, they will be able to
Well,
make
that's
that.
why I mentioned the thing, like, when do you know you're ready? And it's when you are course correcting for yourself when practicing. You put
Correct.
those names down for like the things that you're feeling and the stuff that you're hearing. And when you've got words for it, it's, if you want, you are ready for a teacher.
Right.
And kind of piggybacking off of what you said, for anybody self-learning who's thinking about turning to a teacher, the teacher needs to validate what you already know. I think that's just sort of a basic, like, that's someone you can at least trust to get you started. But not every good teacher is right for every student. Um, and
For sure.
they're okay with that. They'll be sad to see you go, right? But don't be afraid to like try three different teachers. Like
Yeah,
have a
definitely.
teacher for a month. Some schools do like the long-term sign up and they require some commitment and stuff, and those are, reasonable business decisions, I guess. But the schools are business people aiming for retention.
But I
And this is
also
not a
feel when it
problem.
comes to schools, things are a little different anyway, because the thing is, they actually have to look into long-term stuff to sustain
Oh,
the
yeah.
schools, right? Like they have a
The
lot
business,
more
yeah.
like operational costs going on. Like for me, I only do it on a monthly basis, right? Like every
Right.
month you like renew, the number of
Yeah.
lessons that you're doing.
But
And
what I'm
that's
getting
because
at
I'm
here
doing
is
private.
to aim to be able to have the option to switch a teacher every month
Hmm.
is not an unreasonable request.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Like if you're going to like a school or whatever that hires teachers to teach for them, one of those lesson offering businesses or something like that. No one should be afraid of saying, "Cool, but every month I want to like if I can I like try different teachers?" Because a lot of people are like, "Oh, but what style do you want to learn?" And it's like, "Well, I just figured out how to play like notes and stuff. I like these styles, but I know that like remember, it's a forever thing. You're going to be learning new stuff forever,
Correct.
past when you are an advanced musician, past when you pick up some local gigs, like because you started to turn a little semi-pro or something like that. You're still going to be learning. There's no point in like diving into somebody who like only does shredder rock stuff and will only teach you the depth of that. That's more like a college course at that point. But
Yeah.
you're still at Algebra 1 or whatever. Don't do that. Go to different teachers,
Yeah.
and make
Keep your
sure that you
options
can bounce
open, let
around every
that
month
grow.
if that's
Yeah.
what you want.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, I
In
think
fact,
this, say,
I was gonna say my dream business model, if I could like run one of those schools, would be everybody signs up for like an hour lesson. Half of the hour is taught by one teacher and then half by another teacher. And they cover two different like general topics that are set in some kind of curriculum. Like stuff like this. This is good for students though. It's just like it's known to be good for students. For morale, like you realize by hearing different perspectives that um, again, there's more validation of the way that you're thinking about things. You can explain it to another teacher, and like when this other teacher said something, I got confused, and then they'll be like, "Oh, they were saying this. Does this make sense?" And then a student will go, "Yeah, okay," and like but this
it
is really
creates
common.
different perspectives. And like that's what I was actually about to say, that I think this brings us to the last part of this podcast, which is just an overall conclusion of everything right now. um I have divided this conclusion into four main topics. There can be more. The first one is philosophy. Okay. Number two is basically your theory. Number three is gonna be your technique. And number four is for people who are trying to take it up professionally eventually, and that's repertoire and just stylistic survey. Okay. Now, by conclusion, I'm talking about like because at the end of the day, the name of this podcast is how to learn by yourself. Like that's what we are talking about, how to be self-taught, right? So these are the four main umbrellas. Now let's talk about the philosophy. The most important part of the philosophy is number one, staying positive. Number two, being patient. Number three, being open minded. Number four, respecting your own time as well as your teacher's time. you know. And number five, being creative and curious throughout. I think these are like five very important philosophies that you'll have to keep, regardless of which background you come from. It doesn't even matter what style you're going into, you know. With even if you look into rock players, even rock players, each great rock player have their voice, right? Each and every one of them. Cool. Now, music theory. Now, when it comes to music theory, like I've mentioned before, learning to read and write staff notation is definitely, I feel, even if you can't sight read, you know, at least knowing how to read and write well will only help you both in terms of learning and performing and as an overall musician, be it professional or not, right?
We have a video about that,
Yeah,
like
we
reading
had
theory.
actually, yeah, the previous episode was about it, so you can go and check out episode number 3. Okay, for that. In fact, like there is a playlist for it. You can literally search Beyond Fenway Guitar Talks, and there's a YouTube playlist. You will find all of the episodes one by one in there. Now, other things about theory. I would like to essentially line it up similar to the way Berkeley used to line it up, you know. So, the 7 keys that I'd mentioned, that will be the keys that you'll work out everything in. The keys are C, F, B flat, E flat, G, D, and A. Okay, these are going to be the keys you'll work everything out on. Now, what I'm about to say is basically line out the Berkeley proficiency levels essentially. I'm not going to talk about exact levels, I'm just going to line out certain things. So, number one is scales, right? So, you start with chromatic and whole tone scale, and then eventually your major scale. Once you have these three worked out, then you can go into your modes, you know, but have these three worked out first. That's all I'm saying, right? I mean, you also learn about intervals, of course, you know, but I think you can learn intervals and scales simultaneously. It'll just give you a bit more context uh,
Yeah.
in terms of understanding. Yeah, you want to say something? Go ahead.
I'm just thinking about like self-learners out there who may be getting a little bit bewildered by the theory talk.
It's like, see, it's more of like us giving them a direction rather than me saying that you have to know all of these things.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That's all I'm doing here. So no reason for anybody to just like freak out about it. Just
Yeah.
I'm just listing out certain things which I've learned in my journey. If I wish I did that in that flow in the past, it would have saved me a
Yeah.
lot of time because I use the same methods on my students and I can see how much like time it saves them as long as
Yeah.
you're sincere enough, of course, and as
Yeah.
long as you put in the work. Anything that I'm saying is not going to make things very easy for you. You will still have to put in effort, but I can assure you that it is going to save you some time for sure. Save you some
Yeah.
unnecessary wastage of time, that is. See?
I think well, I was gonna actually jump ahead on your thing. When it comes down to these like the philosophy, theory, and repertoire, it's like top three. Oh, technique.
Technique.
You mentioned as
Technique was
well.
number
Yeah.
3. Yeah.
Number three. Oh, okay. Repertoire number four.
Repertoire was 4. Yeah.
Yeah. Finding ways to combine practicing these things
I
from
think
the
that also
very
comes across
beginning.
philosophy, I feel. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's,
But I didn't mention that. Thanks for mentioning it.
yeah, because when it comes down to it, right, like the scales and the major scales and everything, you're practicing it when you're playing like Christmas tunes, or holiday music or children's tunes. Like if you're a parent and you're just wanting to pick up an instrument to play for your kids or something like that. When you're playing the happy tune or when you're playing the sad tune, you're practicing scales. And knowing the scale and all of the notes that are there will help you play that song. And that song will help you play the scales. So there's the repertoire. And then like all the things I mentioned before about just spending time playing very singular notes, especially early on, um, will help you facilitate all of those things.
Right.
The technique, right? Because if the yeah, it's a little bit like bandwidth. If you ain't got the space for the flow, it ain't gonna flow. Um, so
Totally. Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
So
Sorry,
now,
you can continue. I didn't mean to totally cut you off there, but yeah.
no, that's fine. Okay, so I spoke about the major scale, and then once you have learned the chromatic, whole tone, and major scale, simultaneously understanding intervals as well, then you can move on to the modes and other kinds of scales. But do not jump steps just like that. When I say know these scales, I mean know them in these seven keys, at least across two octaves, and you should be able to play it around the fretboard, right?
Have
It's
enough stuff to play them with. Like
exactly,
really look for
exactly,
the tune, look for things where you see them.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about creativity yet. I'm talking about prerequisites to creativity, like at the moment.
Mm.
Next, certain kinds of chord qualities and then certain kinds of chord voicings, right? Definitely start with triads. There are two kinds of triads: closed triads, spread triads, and of course the inversions of these, right? Once you have that clear, once you have those worked out, then start working on your seventh chords, not your 9, 11, and 13s yet, because it's a little bit more we are a bit more specific about 9, 11, and 13s on the guitar. So before that, work out your sevens. Now, specifically the seventh chords that you need to know are: 1 major 7, minor 7, dominant 7, minor 7 flat 5, also known as half diminished, and diminished seventh. And also major and minor 6 as well. But I
I was
feel
gonna.
these five are really the top priority. The major and minor 6 is really more of an alteration of your major 7 and minor 7. It's just one note here and there. As long as you know these five chords well enough, it's really about altering them. That's really it, right? Now comes the voicings. The two kinds of voicings that we commonly use on guitar are drop twos and drop threes, and their inversions. So I think that should streamline the process of scales and chords well enough for anybody looking into things, because by the time these things that have streamlined is crystal clear in your head, everything else will become crystal clear in your head as well, because you're really just altering things over there.
If you can do all of that, yeah, on the guitar, you are, and you really can call on that information and technique, you you can play.
You're ahead of most people, bro. You're
I
really
was gonna
ahead
say
of.
you are professional grade. You are
Yeah.
capable of playing. I mean, obviously, other aspects of
Yeah,
musicianship will
I'm
always apply,
like, just to be
but
clear,
technically, you will.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying that you're gonna survive in a New York jazz club. I'm not saying that. But
yeah.
I am saying that you will survive as a touring artist or as a session player.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Yep.
You will,
You
unless you're playing with
you
somebody
have.
who's like on a completely different tangent altogether, you will definitely survive with that information. Now in this same streamline eventually comes your tensions. What we do for guitar is, rather than adding 9, 11, and 13s to these seventh chords, we often replace one of the chord tones with these tensions, or max to max create a 5 note voicing. We usually try not to go beyond a 4 or a 5 note voicing, just because we don't
There's my
have enough
H again.
real estate. Just
Bar a
because we
seven note chord.
We just don't have enough real estate. That's really it. Piano players can do that, but we can't. We have to live with that, right? Now I want to think, like, if you learn those five types of seventh chords that I mentioned in drop twos and drop threes, and you know exactly where your intervals are. For instance, a root inversion drop two is gonna have your root, fifth, seventh, and your third, right? And let's say you want to add a 9. You could always replace the third with the 9 because that's the closest chord tone to that tension. Or you could replace the 5 with the 6, which is arguably a 13 as well. So that's how you create these voicings. That's how you modify these voicings to just add more color to your sound, right? And then the next thing to
Yeah.
streamline things is learning tunes as well as creating tunes. You'll have to do both. When you're learning a tune or a solo, or even just bits and pieces of a tune or solo, you are supposed to learn it by ear and then transcribe it on a piece of stuff, ideally by hand. But honestly, even I don't have the time to do it by hand. So sure, just use MuseScore, use Sibelius, whatever. But then do that, and then
I do it by
analyze it,
hand because it's
extract
faster for me,
ideas.
and that is
Yeah, you know
old school.
exactly. That's still the best way, I feel, because we had to do that at Berkeley, and I don't think anything can really beat that for sure. But nobody has that kind of time in today's time. So sure, don't waste your time behind it if you feel it's a waste of time, but do it and extract ideas from it, and use that idea to create something of your own, and write that down as well.
Yeah, it's one of those situations where doing any of these things, we mentioned this back in like the learning to sight read, why you would, why you wouldn't video or whatever. Um, Putting the effort in, even to practice for a period of time, these things, some of these things, whether or not you feel like you gained any progression, you did. Um, just knowing what that process is like is big. You know,
Yeah.
I've started trying to transcribe with the trumpet, and it's hard. And I haven't even gotten to the point where I can write anything down for sure. But just working on hearing the note and then trying to replicate it, and then going back to it, and then writing something down and getting it wrong, you improve. Like that alone is the process of
Yeah.
improvement. So
Like
yeah.
one thing I'll add here, like after a point, like what you're saying, that sometimes even if you don't write things down, after a point, you may not need to write things down, because at that point you will reach a level where you can almost visualize that exact thing that you're playing on a staff in your head. It's almost like a
Right.
hologram for
Whatever
you.
you The only way, whatever way you practice it, right? Pulling the sounds from
Mhm.
thin air, that's going to become something that is a response that you have to hearing things.
Yeah, exactly.
That is true for everybody playing any instrument, and this is anybody watching this, whether you're following the theory talk or not. If you practice, whenever you reach that point where you can make sounds, and this is why we had the writing video, you
Right.
practice hearing sounds, copying it, putting it to paper somehow, it will become a part of you in a way where you can do that anywhere at any time. Yeah.
Definitely. So I'm not saying do it all your life, but I'm saying is do it enough times so that this becomes a little natural to you. That's all I'm saying. Okay? All right, so let's talk about point number three, which was the technique side, right? We already spoke a little bit about the technique side. Now, technique, of course, depending on the style of playing, can really differ, but I think we all can agree that certain techniques have become staple in today's time. Number one, your humble flat picking technique, right? How you hold a pick does make a difference, but I feel like this is how I usually hold it, and the way I teach it is, imagine you're trying to give me a nail cutter or pen, right? That's literally how I hold
Oh,
it, and
it's a
yeah,
good way to say it.
and I
Yeah.
I hold it this way because I do a lot of hybrid picking, so holding it this way really
Same.
helps. If you hold it this way, nothing wrong with that. As long as what you're playing makes sense and it works with your playing, it's all good. Right?
For our finger pickers out there, I'm going to drop this. And for all those who are utterly beginning and don't really know where this sits, no matter what, the interface with your strings on guitar is going to make a difference, and it will keep making a difference forever, right? The
Yeah.
way you approach the string, where you touch the string, the way you hold on to it, push on a little bit, and then it gets released, makes a difference. There's a difference between, for example, pushing the string into the guitar versus pulling it back and out or something. And it will, you can't really hear it too great on this,
No,
because it's
that was actually pretty
acoustic
clear.
electric, but yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so like, right, how you hit it, how much, if you're finger picking and you're using your nails, how much flesh to nail ratio. If you're not using your nails, like whether or not you get that sort of swipey sound. If you're picking, whether or not you're picking like flat versus pushing in and angling just a little bit. Like the sound is considerably more pronounced, I think, with the
Yeah.
pick. And like, nothing is better or worse than the other, but
It's just a
you should
sound.
know, yeah, it's gonna be different. Some of them will allow you to play faster, some will allow you to play slower, some you prefer, some styles call for certain things, right? That's why we tend to encourage students as teachers to, if not pick or do something a certain way, then to experiment with certain things, because everything matters.
Correct.
And again, these are things that you can practice. It's one of those rabbit holes that you can dive into. Yeah, sorry, just had to clarify that.
Correct.
I wanted to say, because in case anybody isn't using a pick, it still matters the way you come at the strings and the way you handle them. Yeah.
Yeah. So in simple words, using a pick, finger picking, hybrid picking. Um, Flamenco, I can't do flamenco, but then hey, if you can do it, great. Because trust me, there is use for it. Right? Exactly that. That kind of stuff. But I feel these three techniques, just using a pick, finger picking, and hybrid picking, these three are comparatively a lot more common across multiple genres. So as a guitar player, you will definitely find use for these three a lot more compared to any other specialized style like thumping, flamenco, etc.
Playing
Or
with
if
your
you want to play
teeth.
with your teeth,
Was-
it's a different thing. Right.
I've never done it.
Left
Never
hand
done it,
technique.
actually.
Left hand technique, we spoke about the thumb placement. We spoke about stretching, so those are definitely things you want to work on, right? So I think these are like more of the important stuff that you want to keep in mind, and everything else that you add is really just more specialized, based on what kind of music you're playing or just based on your own philosophy of music or sound in general.
And I mentioned this at the beginning for beginners, but actually, this goes for everyone. Doesn't matter what technique you are working on, there's a certain amount of muscles that you need to use, and there's a certain amount that you don't. And you don't want to be tensing up things that you don't need. And you only
Yeah.
want to be tensing up the things that you do need for any technique, only as much as you need to.
Mhm.
So learning to practice relaxing things that you don't need when playing, no matter what technique you are learning, or even if you're just starting to produce a sound, right? If it's on the guitar, you should be thinking about what posture leaves you the most relaxed.
I think posture
You
is
should be
important.
thinking about how high or low your neck is. And I know I'm being a terrible example of this sort of thing because I've slouched all my life, but it makes a difference. It really
Definitely makes a
does.
difference.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, last
Relax. Yeah.
umbrella. Your the last thing you said got cut out. Just say it again.
Oh, just sorry, it was relax. Just,
Relax.
yeah, that was the main thing there. With when practicing technique, all of those things we talk about, don't tense up. when trying to think more specifically. Every change you make should come with that question of, okay, am I leaving anything tense that shouldn't be?
Absolutely.
Relax. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the fourth umbrella, which is really more for people who are trying to take it up professionally, but hey, if you want to do it anyway, go ahead. That is repertoire. Now, what should your repertoire depend on? Like, or be based on, right? Um, well, number one, depending on the country you're living in, if you want to play more commercial gigs, make sure you know repertoire of that country, right? Well-known repertoire in that country. How do you get to know that? Go to gigs, go to local gigs where people are playing commercial music. Check out the set list, check out the way they're arranging them. A lot of time medleys work really nice in commercial music. A lot of commercial music is not ballads actually. Even if they are ballads, they're not performed as ballads often because in the live scene, people are often coming to really dance to you. So your arrangements will have to be, done accordingly, right? But either way, your repertoire, if you're trying to do commercial music, will have to be related to the repertoire of your country. I live in India, so the more popular repertoire in my country is Hindi music, like Bollywood music to be more precise. In my city, it's a mix of Bollywood as well as Bengali music. In a different city, it'll be a mix of Bollywood and their regional music, etc. Because India has a lot of languages, a lot of dialects to be like specific, right? So each region has its own regional thing as well. You know. But whatever, that's the basic idea. If you are specifically working on English music, classics, pop, jazz, I think that repertoire is fairly similar worldwide. Like if you're playing private gigs as a jazz band, you play tunes like Honeysuckle Rose, Satin Doll, T for Two, Fly Me to the Moon, Autumn Leaves, this kind of stuff. So definitely at least know like 50 jazz standards of different kinds and then know like 10 more for yourself. Like I'm telling you that you're not going to be playing giant steps much at a wedding gig unless you have really really cool clients. But you ain't going to be playing giant steps at a wedding gig. Otherwise,
Yeah. No.
neither are you going to be
Well,
playing Donnelly at a wedding gig.
you can play it in my wedding,
Yeah,
but
yeah, but not at every wedding, right? So similarly, non-jazz songs, I have seen tunes like "I Just Called to Say I Love You" or "Don't Know Why" by Nora Jones.
oh, Love, that's a good one.
LOV is also a very well-known standard. Yeah, that one. L
Oh, cheek to cheek.
cheek to
Yeah.
cheek. Yeah, but again, like I'm talking about the non-standard ones now. Then
Oh,
"Isn't She
sorry.
Lovely?" Then a few Bruno Mars tunes like "Treasure."
Oh, a lot of Stevie Wonder.
A lot of Stevie Wonder in general. Like I played a lot of Bruno Mars as well at GB gigs in the US.
Yeah. Oh, John Legend. Legend. John Legend.
I have
Yeah.
I don't think I've played any John Legend songs, have I?
Oh, really? I used to play a little bit.
No, I don't think. Or maybe I did, but maybe I was just reading from a chord chart, so I don't really remember it. That happens as well.
Yeah.
That's why reading is important because a lot of times you may not know the song, but they have given you the chord chart. So you read, make your money, go home, have fun. So it helps you read. What
It's
else?
still fun. It's still
It's
fun to
it's
do
still
that.
fun. It's fun. It's not. I think the process of learning to read or write can be very tedious, but then the advantages to it is unparalleled for sure. It's definitely unparalleled. Anyway, we were talking about non-jazz repertoire. I mean, I've played a bunch of John Denver and Bob Dylan tunes as well in our non-jazz repertoire. Then some modern pop songs you should definitely know, like stuff like A Thousand Years. I don't know how modern that is. Is it very modern? I don't think it's that modern anymore.
was thinking more like I've had to do Lady Gaga, Adele,
Oh, like you know
Dua
that really
Lipa.
popular Adele song. There's a fire.
Yeah, Rolling in the Deep,
Rolling
that
in the
one.
deep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've played that a bunch. Yeah.
So
I
these are
mean,
songs that you need
wait,
to
did
have
you
in your
did you
repertoire.
know Mark what's his name? Malsegna, I think his name is. Mark? You met him, right? No? We were at Berkeley at the same time. He's Alicia Keys' guitar player, but Alicia Keys' repertoire. People should know. It just occurred to me. Yeah, yeah.
Alicia, the
Sorry.
keyboard player for Alicia Keys was one of my ensemble teachers, Zoe Harris, Alonzo Harris.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
amazing player,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
He was a really,
Yeah.
really good keyboard player.
Yeah. Well, their guitar player, well, I don't know if they have another guitar player, but this guy Mark that I don't know. I met him through Pratesh. So, yeah, hung out a little bit over at his
What do you say
place.
his
Maybe
name
you
was?
weren't Malsegna, I want to say. I never read his last name
Are
correctly.
you talking
I
about
just know him as
Alicia
Mark.
Keys or was he the guitar player for Shaggy?
No, definitely Alicia Keys. He's her player now, I think. He's
Okay.
like doing
Maybe if I
stuff with
see his face, I'll know.
yeah.
Probably, yeah.
Anyways, but
Yeah, I
my
think we
point
had
there
met
was
too many
Alicia
people
Keys'
in the
repertoire. She's got so many songs that are wildly popular. If you're going to be playing professionally, you need to know her songs and like the
yeah,
parts to her
I think that's a good
songs and
point you
stuff.
brought up. Like, if you want to play for a specific artist and you're trying to put yourself out there on social media, trying to get their attention, then definitely learn the
Yeah.
songs and put that out.
Yeah, you got to know all of their repertoire plus people they like. You
Yep.
know, if you want to like capture the attention of like managers and people like that. Yeah. Yeah.
Correct.
Big
And
time.
you all, I think, as a professional, when it comes to repertoire, you also have to understand that when we say repertoire, you might learn the song, but when you're actually playing it on stage, the arrangement might be different from the original recording.
Should be
So you got
different.
to be ready for that. Like, you don't just learn the repertoire, you got to own the repertoire.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You gotta like the song enough to like
Yeah,
play
like
around with it.
I
And
play I just call to say I love you in five different keys depending on the singer I play with. So
yeah,
you got to be ready for these things, and the thing is, in certain
I
keys you
thought, isn't
might
she
do it.
lovely in like three different keys by now? It's like,
Yeah, or like take a tune like Every Breath You Take, for instance, right? Where you have
ooh,
a specific guitar part, but let's say a vocalist wants to do it in G, right? Or let's say a
yeah.
vocalist wants to do it in F sharp. You've run out of real estate, my friend. you know so you got to like work out a different way of playing something similar, because of course, like, at that point it won't be exactly the same, but you got
And
to work out a different idea
it
so that you can still play
still
it.
totally applies to people who are just starting out who are still following our conversation here about this.
Hey, thank you
Like,
for watching the video so far, by the way. Like,
yes, yeah, please
really,
like it
really
and
appreciate that.
subscribe and to both of our stuff and
Yep.
comment down below. Um, but even for those of you who are like, oh, but I'm just learning how to play like notes at this point, like you said earlier, Aaron, we're talking about all this like learning repertoire, playing for people. Like, these are nice goals to have.
Yep.
3 months into your playing journey, 6 months, 20 years into your playing journey. And this comes down to like the once you do are able to play the sounds that you want, you should be learning the songs that you want.
Correct.
Learning whatever you can of them, and it doesn't need to be just the parts that the guitar plays. If you're getting really into the old blues style, like the Hendrix and the Clapton stuff, great. What is it about the songs that you like? Pick up other parts of it. I have a few covers where I like loop different sections of songs and then play like the way that the voice would sing with the bends and everything because I have a Floyd Rose setup thing and don't be afraid to really go for it, right? At every level, you can be trying to learn how to do something new, whether or not you just started with a teacher for the first time and they
Correct.
haven't taught you that thing yet. But go do the thing, write down what it feels like, and bring that to the lesson. Like I said, they're going to validate if they're a good teacher. what it is that you are experiencing as you learn things on your own. There are, it's additive, right? It's that like you're just finding new techniques.
Correct.
And this goes with the repertoire too. Yeah, depending on how far you want to take that. If you're doing it for professional reasons, know that there's a purpose to it. You
For sure.
you actually need to know these things. You're not gonna, be asked to do the stuff until you get there. But if you're not interested in that, know that it's only gonna make you able to work with more people and enjoy your time, like as a hobbyist, bet more with other people. It's not like you and I, Raj,
And
aren't
get more work.
hobbyists as well. Yeah, it's like we still do it for fun too, and we run into hobbyists who set up gigs too and end up paying us anyways because it happens,
It
Like,
does
yeah.
happen. You never know. And on that note, I think we've come towards the end of this podcast. So thank you again, everybody, for watching. And we really appreciate you watching this far if you have. And please consider subscribing to our channels, both our channels, and
And we
liking,
didn't mention
sharing this video.
online resources and stuff, but I just want to drop this out there. Online resources, again, are only as helpful as far as they allow you to set specific goals for yourself, right?
Honestly,
If you're,
like, sorry to cut you off there. More than online resources, it's really about the keywords that you're searching. You know, what
yeah.
worked for
Well, again,
me when I was like learning myself is whatever question I had in my head, regardless of how wildly stupid it was, I literally just wrote that on the Google search bar. Like
yeah.
for instance, something as simple as why do we have a white dot on the fifth fret of a guitar? And you'd be surprised as to how accurate your answer is from Google.
And again, putting the things that you're feeling and noticing into words somewhere, it helps you ask better questions for when you do go to your online resources. If you see something that doesn't seem anything like what you're talking about, it's because it's wrong. And you know that because you wrote down how you feel about it, right? As a
And
self-learner,
And the
right?
thing
Yeah.
is, in today's time, Google has something that we didn't have when I was like doing this, right? So let's search that same question on Google right now, okay? I'm just gonna search.
Are you talking about the AI assistant?
Yeah, and it gives you
Uh,
amazing answers, right? All I'm gonna do is type out why do we have dots on the guitar fretboard. Search.
I actually don't like the dots, and I asked for them
I
not to be
know,
put on
but
this
just look
guitar.
at this. It's beautifully written out. It even highlights the main section,
Yeah.
right? I'll read it out for people who are finding it hard to read. The dots on a guitar fretboard are position markers that help players navigate the neck by indicating specific frets, typically at the third, fifth, seventh, ninth, and 12th positions. They serve as visual landmarks, making it easier to find your place on the fretboard without constantly looking down, which is especially helpful for beginners. That's how well the internet can explain things to him. That's an AI assistant.
Yeah.
Right.
But you still need to like write down what you're experiencing.
Correct.
Everybody out there learning on your own.
Like all I'm saying is that
Take-
yeah, like, all
Yeah,
I'm
that's
saying is
where.
that whatever question you have in your head, you literally ask that question to Google exactly the way you have it in your head, no matter how wild it is. Right. And that's a good place to start, even through that, you will actually end up with the right internet resources for yourself.
You
At
will
least,
find things that are helpful. Yeah.
yeah, because at least that's how I found things, right? I used to just search for those questions. Like, for instance, let's say music theory. I ended up over this book called Jazz Theory. It's actually a very popular book, back then, right? And how did I figure that? I literally typed, "What is jazz theory? Is there a book for jazz theory?" That's literally what I had typed, and I got it.
Oh, jazz theory.
It just literally says jazz theory in the book.
Berkeley Harmony, 1 through 4.
Yeah, I mean, for all you know, somebody has probably put that out there on the internet as well. Now, I'm not see, I'm not supporting piracy in any possible way, but sometimes you're just not Bill Gates, you know what I mean, or Elon Musk. So you got to save some money. It's okay, but when you make it well enough, get yourself a physical copy of that book.
What? Which one? The Jazz Theory?
Anything. Like
Yeah,
if
yes,
yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just more of an ethics thing, I feel. That's all.
yeah.
Because like
Buy your
art,
books.
in art, I feel everybody should be ethical about things.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah, buy the
lack of
books.
ethics is
Don't
not a
rip
good thing.
people's intellectual property off.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Anyway, on that note, let's end today's podcast. Aaron, always a pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
And everybody,
I
once
mean,
again,
it's
like
our
it,
things. I'm not having you.
copy it.
It's our
Well,
things.
yeah, but I don't know. I think you have a bigger following, so I'm just gonna say you're having me on. Thank you.
I
Yeah.
mean, that I don't think that makes much of a difference, man. We started this podcast as like ex-roommates who were just catching up, and like there's a good way to catch up every week. You know what I mean? Every 2 weeks at least. I mean,
I
we are
liked where we
catching up
went
more
today, though.
often. The audience is
Yes, we
catching
are.
us every 2 weeks, but yeah. In case you guys are wondering, yeah, so the videos come out every 2 weeks on Sundays. So, yeah, you can actually hit the notification bell button if you want to be notified every time a video comes up. We usually premiere the videos. So, if you want more of a dramatic experience, you could look for the premiere, you know, build some hype and stuff, ape shit, you know what I mean? But anyway, thank you for watching, and we will see you with another episode soon ish. Bye bye.
Bye.